Imagine a loved one brutally murdered in a foreign country, allegedly by another American, and the suspected killer never faces trial because of a loophole in U.S. laws.
Correspondent Peter Van Sant and his team have investigated a case like that for nearly 3 years and confront the accused killer in tomorrow night's 48 Hours. Here's a preview.
So this is one of the last pictures taken of her alive.
Right.
Denver attorney Wanda Abel forever misses her younger sister Carolyn, who was teaching English in Seoul, South Korea in 1988 when she was murdered, stabbed to death in her apartment. Carolyn's apartment was ransacked, and it appeared to be a robbery gone bad. Her fellow teachers, like Nancy Burkaw, were frightened.
Not only were we devastated about the loss of Carolyn, we of course wondered who's next.
John Boatwright, a chief of detectives in South Korea for the Army's Criminal Investigation Division, was brought on the case to assist.
I was convinced that whoever did this probably knew Carolyn.
Why?
Because there was no signs of forced entry into the apartment.
He decided to interview the 2 American teachers who discovered Carolyn's body, Kathy Patrick and Sandra Ames. Under questioning, Ames made a shocking accusation that her roommate Kathy murdered Carolyn and staged the scene to look like a robbery.
It never occurred to any of us that the killer was among us.
Who do you believe held the knife and murdered Carolyn Abel?
Kathy Patrick.
South Korean officials issued this warrant for Patrick's arrest, but she had moved back to Washington state. Investigators there quickly learned they were powerless to arrest Patrick because the U.S. and South Korea didn't have an extradition treaty.
My sister never got to live her life. Why does Kathy get to live a full life?
Kathy turned down our request for an interview.
Okay, this is the building.
So we went to her office at Western Washington University, where Kathy Patrick is a guidance counselor.
There are investigators from 2 countries that have now are certain that you murdered Carolyn Abel. What do you have to say?
I have to say that I'm innocent.
These are Kathy Patrick's first public words on the murder of Carolyn Abel in 30 years.
There were 30 stab wounds on Carolyn's body, and friends say that you attacked her after she rejected your romantic advances.
No, this has to stop now, please.
And Peter Van Sant is here with us now. So, Peter, I guess the first question is, how could this happen? How could this loophole be exploited?
That's the million-dollar question in this case, and it just so happens that in South Korea, a murder warrant was issued for Kathy Patrick's arrest. However, she had already left the country, come back to Washington state. At the time, there was no extradition treaty between South Korea and the United States. So they requested her, but we didn't send her back. So that's where she needed to be tried. That's where the investigation was done. That's where all the case evidence was. And then in the United States, here's the other loophole. You can't, at that time, you could not try an American in the United States for killing another American overseas. So this literally falling between the cracks, whatever phrase you want to use, even though there's a murder warrant out for her, but now that's expired, the statute of limitations has passed, she will likely never face trial.
So that was going to be my question, because you said at that time you couldn't be prosecuted, but if the laws have changed now, could she face justice?
The law that was changed, which was pushed by the victim's family in this case, Carolyn Abel's family worked for years. In 1994, a law was passed that you could be tried in the United States, but it's never been applied retroactively, only with cases, and I covered a case in Panama involving a murder in Panama in California where this law was applied and the American was found guilty. But right now, the fact that the case files may have been destroyed, it's just not likely that she will ever face justice.
Wow.
You know, we were talking about how the 48 Hours teases are so good, so compelling, and I thought when I watched the preview clip of you confronting her and her sort of sitting down and answering your questions, what was that like? And I know there's a lot more that people will want to see on Saturday, but what was that like?
Well, those unscheduled interviews are always the most nerve-wracking because you don't know how they're going to reply. And also remember, we had asked her to talk. Look, this case we've worked off and on for 3 years. This was a murder in 1988. More than a dozen lives have been altered, many of them destroyed by this act. And so we felt we needed to give her every opportunity to respond, even if she didn't want us to be there. It was an important moment to confront her with this. And going into that, it was a little nerve-wracking, but we managed to get about 5 different questions in. Look, when she did come back to the United States, she agreed to a polygraph test, which she failed. And now she's a counselor at a university in Western Washington where she meets with students every day.
Wow.
And it is an unbelievable series of events.
3 years working on this. That's unbelievable. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Peter, so much.
Thank you.
You can watch Peter's full report on 48 Hours tomorrow night at 10, 9 Central, only on CBS.